Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Miguel,
This is Gladys.
and we're actually going to start doing a new series on my YouTube channel. We're going to call it Revisited, where we essentially just revisit specific films or franchises, and we kind of rewatch them, talk about them, and talk about our feelings and where we stand watching it again, how we felt watching it in the past. And we're going to do that with different franchises. Like I said earlier, we're going to start off today with the MCU, and obviously what kickstarted the MCU was the Iron Man film. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to be dropping these videos periodically whenever there's time in between our schedules to actually watch a movie and talk about it and record it. We'll do that and drop it. So as of right now, there's nothing concrete schedule wise, but we're going to try to do it like every week or every 2 weeks and drop it for you guys to enjoy. And then if you guys have any ideas of what to have us watch after the MCU, because the MCU is, like 20 something movies in now, by all means, just comment and let us know, and we'll take that into consideration for the, the next series. Right now, we think we're gonna start at Iron Man and end at Endgame, just because anything after that is relatively new-ish, and we want to kind of give this MCU series a stopping point. So, without further ado, we're gonna get into our revisited commentary. So, like I said, the first one was in the MCU was Iron Man. It came out in 2008. I have some notes here on the side. It was directed by Jon Favreau, who we all know directed Elf, Cowboys vs. Aliens, Chef, The Jungle Book, The Lion King, and he also directed a few episodes of The Mandalorian. It was produced by Kevin Feige, who we all know Kevin Feige is the king of the MCU, king of all, geek fandom. He's our Lord and Savior. We love him. He produced tons of things: Spider-Man, Hulk, The Fantastic Four, Daredevil, Punisher, and obviously all the films in the greater MCU. It was written by Mark Fergus and Hulk Osby. They had done a script for Children of Men. I was looking on Wikipedia. I didn't really find much on them, but hey, Children of Men was a great movie, and Iron Man had a great script, so they knew what they were doing. It was budgeted at $140 million, $140 million, and the opening weekend was about 98.5 million, and it grossed a total of 585. And it was the first film to pass $300 million at the domestic box office, which back in the day was a big deal. Right now, you have movies, destroying the box office like never before. Obviously, pre-pandemic, but back in 2008, this was a big deal. Some kind of stuff to point out. This movie was trying to be made since 1990, April of 1990, by Universal. Then it was bought by 20th Century Fox in 1986. They wanted Nicolas Cage to be Tony Stark in 97. They had Tom Cruise in 98, who was potentially going to produce it and star in it. He was the strongest candidate. We actually thought he was going to be the guy to, don the suit. Obviously, didn't happen. And then it eventually went to Quentin Tarantino, was approached for it, as long as Josh Whedon, which he ultimately didn't end up doing it. He went and did the Avengers 1 and 2, which obviously we're going to cover that in a few weeks. And those are just some things that, behind the scenes that happened with the movie before it was made. It ended up actually being given to Jon Favreau, which we mentioned earlier, in April 2006, and he celebrated by actually losing 70 pounds because he wanted to be in the movie himself, and he needed to get into shape. So that's kind of a quick summary of the movie, its details, and its little tidbits of information before the movie was actually filmed. Now, with that said, we want to go into our general thoughts after we just watched it. I've been talking a lot, so we're gonna give it away to Gladys and have her tell us what she thought about the movie.
So this for me, I've always been big on superheroes. I love it. This came out 2008. I loved it from the very beginning. I think Robert Downey Jr. was great. First act, second act were great. Third, I feel like for me was a little bit slower. But overall, one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, I Loved it. I remember seeing it with a bunch of friends. We all sat there, and at first, when they announced it, I was lukewarm because I was just like, Iron Man. He is part of the Marvel Trinity, Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America, but he hadn't really gotten much, I guess, action on the silver screen or in television or anything like that, or any kind of medium. You never really saw him much. And I was just like, whatever, we'll see how it is. And I was completely surprised by how good the movie was. I didn't think it was going to stink, but I didn't think it was going to be the powerhouse that it was. Watching it again, I've seen the movie well over a dozen times in the past, couple of years since it's been out. But I never get tired of it. We see Endgame and things like No Way Home, Civil War, and Guardians of the Galaxy, but this movie still has a charm to it that doesn't go away no matter how many times you watch it. So watching it again, we just watched it like 5 minutes ago. I loved it. I can't get enough of it. Like she said, the first two acts I thought were the stronger ones out of the three. The first one being the strongest for me. Just having Tony in the cave and going through all that, I thought was probably the best part of the movie. The third act, I feel like they rushed a little bit. It kind of wasn't the best, but I don't think it was bad by any stretch of the imagination. Now we're gonna kind of talk about the movie by talking about the characters and the actors that played them. So we're gonna first start with Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. So what do you think about Robert Downey Jr.?
I think he's perfect. I think he is the perfect Iron Man. I can't see anyone else in that role. I think he was the perfect, just his own personality in that role, I felt was really strong. They did a really good job setting the stage so that you got to know who he was in the beginning. He was this playboy. He, owned his own company. He was rich. He, slept with all these girls. You can see it from the very beginning. You can see it from the very beginning who he was, and they did a good job, I guess, moving it around and changing it so that you could see where he I guess knew what he was doing wrong. I kept it.
It's fine. This is her first time. So we're gonna get better at this. She actually entertained me by being my co-host, so I'm extremely appreciative of her being here with me. So Robert Downey Jr. I love him in the role. He is, as far as I'm concerned, Tony Stark. He embodies the character on par with Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. These are people that you cannot separate them. They are that person, and not because they're being themselves, but because the personality of the character they're playing and the personality that they have in real life are so similar that they are the same person, which worked out to obviously the MCU's benefits, to the movie's benefits, to Robert Downey Jr.'s benefits. He actually was a wild card for the studio. Jon Favreau had to push really hard for the studio to trust him to be the lead. They didn't want him to be the lead, and Jon Favreau kind of campaigned for him and explained, given his past, his troubled past with substances and things like that, it was similar to the character of Tony Stark. And we're gonna do a quick pause because my dogs are losing their minds.
So Tony Stark was really good, even in the scenes where he is in his basement by himself and he's messing around trying to get this suit perfected, and he's with the machines. He's just very charismatic. He's a funny guy. He had me laughing the whole time he's down in the basement doing what he does. He's just his personality just stands out. He made this film and it's very enjoyable. I've watched it tons of times, and every time I know what's gonna happen, and every time I laugh at each point just because he's so good at what he does.
Yeah, his delivery is awesome. It never gets old. So the next person we're gonna talk about is Terrence Howard as James Rhodey Rhodes. So I loved Terrence Howard in this role. I thought he fit in like a glove. He was a good kind of foil for Tony, the serious one, the military man. And I loved whenever they were on screen together, the back and forth that they had. It obviously, we all know he never continued with the role because of issues. Like I was saying, we all know Terrence Howard had some kind of fallout. Given when the Seven movie was being produced, he wanted to, be to headline the movie. He was upset that Robert Downey Jr. was getting paid more than he was, because originally Terrence Howard was getting paid more in the first film. Robert Downey Jr. was only getting paid $500,000. I think he got paid $750,000 or $1 million, something like that, and he wanted to take the reins of Iron Man. And the producers and the directors, that's not where they wanted to take this character. That's not where they wanted to take the franchise. But I did enjoy him. I thought he was great. He was charismatic, but also stern. The lines that he had, because obviously he didn't have a ton of lines. He wasn't in the movie as much as, Tony Stark and things like that. But whenever he was on screen, I thought he was very, very charismatic. So what about you? What do you think?
I thought he was great. I really liked him in this role. I would have liked to see him in the other movies as well. Unfortunately, it did not work out. But they did have very good chemistry. Every time they were on the screen together, it felt organic. It felt natural. It did not seem forced at all. He was really good. But yeah, I really would have liked to see him in the other films.
So next is, we're gonna round it off with the trio. I guess that's what how I set it up. Is with again Gwyneth Paltrow, and she plays Virginia Pepper Potts, which I didn't even know her first name was Virginia. I thought her name was Pepper. But looking it up, her name is Virginia. She's never called Virginia in the movies, but that's her government name. But Gwyneth Paltrow, I thought she was great. She's a person that I would not expect to see in a superhero movie, and I thought she was great. She brought a warmth to the screen, to the character, that I thought was needed in the movie. I thought obviously she kept Tony grounded during the entire movie. She was basically like his center, and he's a playboy, he's a philanthropist, he's this, he's that. But whenever he's around her, you see that no matter what, he's a good person, and she brings that out of him. I think she keeps up with his sarcasm. She keeps up with, his wit, and not many people could do that on screen. And she does that with so much ease. And I thought she, was great. What about you? What do you think?
I really liked her in this role. She was Tony's person. She saw through all of his BS. He was around. He would sleep around with multiple women, and she knew him for who he was, and she loved him anyway. And he loved her. You could see how he felt about her. She was someone special. You can see how he treated other women, and then when she was in the room, she is the only person that he saw. That was his person to go to. I love that in the movie. She his arc. She put it, and she said, proof that this is that Tony Stark does have a heart. And he opened the box, and you can see his natural smile. It was beautiful to see. I think that they are great together. She's kind of in the movie, and she really doesn't know what's happening. When she sees him in his suit for the first time, she sees him and she can tell that there's bullet holes, and she's concerned. And as the movie progresses, she's like, you're gonna get yourself killed. I don't want you doing this. I'm quitting. And he's like, you stood by while I made weapons of mass destruction. I was making tons of money off of this, and now that I'm trying to change and I'm trying to help people and save them, you're gonna walk out. And she realizes, like, she's right. I know that he's a good person, and he's finally acting on it. So she decided to help. That for me was beautiful. I think they're great on camera. And as Iron Man progresses in Avengers, you see their relationship progress, and it's one of my favorites.
Okay, so now we're done with our initial trio, I guess, and we're gonna go into the villains. And the next person is obviously Jeff Bridges, who plays Obadiah Stane. So, what were your feelings and thoughts on Stane?
I thought he was great. He was funny. At first, you depict him as, he's on Tony's side. He's trying to help him. The scene that makes me laugh the most is when he comes on screen. He's calling Tony, and they're on FaceTime, and he's in bed, with no shirt on, and I'm like, why would a grown-ass man call another grown-ass man with no clothes on? That was funny. Tony Stark comes back from Afghanistan. You know, he's there. He seems like he's a good person, like a second father to Tony. And, you know, the first time I watched it, I had no idea that he was going to become the villain in the movie. But I feel like they did a really good job starting him off. And then he's the one who ends up telling Tony, hey, you know, I'm the one who locked you out of the board of directors. I'm the one who doesn't want you making the calls. You know, he admitted it to him himself. And then obviously as the movie progresses, it shows you more that he's the one who had attempted to have Tony assassinated. I thought that he did a great job. He at first started off as his friend and then became the villain, and he did an excellent job.
Yeah, I love Jeff Bridges in this role. I thought he was amazing. Like you said, he starts off, when you first see him, he has this warm, cuddly, like big teddy bear energy, and he's very protective and supportive of Tony. Obviously, he's probably been there for Tony for years, 20 years, God knows how long. He's been helping Tony since his father passed away, and he's his number two guy. And you see, like, he's one of the only people that Tony has in his life. And I love how Jeff Bridges plays the character, in the first arc, and then you see kind of, I guess, wrinkles or ruffles in their relationship, and they're not seeing eye to eye in the second act. And then in the third act, you kind of see him go full, psychotic villain. And as a villain, he seems threatening, so for him to go from this cuddly teddy bear to this psychotic, maniac, and you could believe the actor doing both, I thought was great. It sucks that he died in the movie, because somebody like that, I feel like, would have been better to see him in multiple movies. And this, unfortunately, is a trend that Marvel does. When they have a villain, they kill him off, in one movie, and you're not allowed to have this villain kind of, breathe and evolve during the franchise. They just one and done. I thought he could have been someone that you could see him come back, have him go to prison instead of dying in the arc reactor and then seeing him later on in the franchise. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. They actually had asked him to wear a bald cap, and he was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm shaving. And he had this look with the beard and the bald and the suit and his height. He just worked. I loved him. I thought he was great. And then in keeping with the whole villains, the next person we're going to talk about is Sean Tube, we're going to talk about Farhan Tahir, who plays Raza. He was the quote-unquote leader of the 10 Rings. And he wasn't in the movie much, but he was the initial villain, or who we perceived to be the villain in the first two arcs. And what are your thoughts on Raza?
For me, he was good. Maybe not as memorable as the other ones, right? Like he said, he's only in the movie for a short period of time. But he did come off as someone to be feared. Starting off in the movie, I believe that he was going to be the actual villain. But yeah, he did an okay job for me.
Yeah, I thought he was great. Whenever he was on screen, he had this kind of intimidating presence, even when he wasn't saying anything. I wanted him to be the villain. Even if he wasn't the main villain now, I would have loved him to stay in the MCU. Now, he had an off-screen death, so with being the MCU, he could always come back, but it's heavily implied that he was murdered in the third act by Obadiah Stane's, men. But I thought he was great. I thought and again, he didn't say much, didn't do much, but he just had this presence of intimidation and of, he was a legitimate threat to Tony and to, the greater population in the Middle East. But his time in the MCU was cut short, but I thought he was great. So with the villains down, we're going to start talking about some of the supporting cast. And I think one of the biggest unsung people in the supporting cast was played by Sean Tube, who played Yo Jensen. And Jensen is obviously the person that Tony meets in the cave when he's attacked and then ends up, abducted. So, what do you think about Jensen?
I liked him. He was, from the very beginning, he helped save Tony. He helped them build the suit. Early on, he let him know, Tony asked him, he said, yeah, I have a family, I have a wife, I believe he had a child. He said, once I get out of here, I'm going to go home to them. You find out as the movie goes on that his family actually died. He, from the very beginning, knew that he was not going to make it out of there. It felt genuine, sincerely felt like he cared about Tony, and knew his role in it. I think one of the last things he told Tony was, not to waste this chance, which Tony ended up not wasting it, right? He did a lot with the second chance that he got. I thought he was really great, very wholesome.
All right, yeah. So, Jensen, again, another character. And this movie was so good that every character that didn't make it out of this movie, I felt like it was a loss to the MCU and to the franchise just because they were so good. Like, Jensen, obviously, his character had to die, or, it was that push that Tony needed, but he was so good. He's such a unsung hero because if it wasn't for that character, we would not get the Iron Man that we get in Endgame, and in Avengers and all those other movies. He changed his life with just a matter of, weeks that he was with him in a cave. And that impact, goes a long way. And I thought he was great. And the actor was awesome. Awesome. Loved him. So the next supporting character is Jon Favreau himself, the director, who played Harold Happy Hogan. And he is our favorite, I don't even know what to call him, assistant, right-hand man, don't know. Whatever the security guard, I don't know what he is. But whatever he is for Tony Stark, he was awesome. But what do you think about Jon Favreau?
He's one of my favorites. Every time he's on the screen, and he doesn't do much, and he has a few lines here and there, but he brings a warmth to me. He's delivers all of his lines perfectly. He's charismatic. He's funny. He gets a chance with Aunt May, which is awesome down the line. But definitely one of my favorites. Not till this year that I realized he was the director. And I like that, like Stan Lee, you get a glimpse of him every movie. You get a glimpse of him every now and then. And I know him originally from Friends, huge fans of Friends. So it always reminds me of that role. And honestly, every time I see him, I have a smile. He's great.
Ultimate Fighting Champion. So, I loved Jon Favreau in this role. I thought it was great. I don't see much of Happy Hogan in the comic books that I read. I know he exists, but seeing him in this movie and seeing kind of his role in Tony's life and just the relationship that they have, you could tell that that's kind of like his best friend, his bro and things like that. And besides it being just a work, boss employee relationship, they're real friends, and you kind of see that Happy kind of enables him in his lifestyle, with the partying and the gambling and the girls and stuff like that. And he kind of, gives him a thumbs up, thumbs down if he should, talk to the girl or not. And I thought that was a really cute scene at the beginning when the reporter stops him and he has his back turned, and then Happy says, she's cute, she's all right. And then that's when he turns around to talk to her. So I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, Happy was great. I love that he's still in the series. He actually was supposed to die I'm not sure it was the second or third movie, and Robert Downey Jr. was like, no, he can't die. He's not going to die. No way, shape, or form that's happening. And they kept him in the movie. And he's been in the MCU up until literally about a month ago. He was in No Way Home, and he's probably going to be in the MCU for a lot longer. And I thought he was great. So next guy we're going to talk about is Clark Gregg, who plays a fan favorite, Phil Coulson, and this is the first time we actually see him. And he had a very small role. You see him like 3 times, and it's always the same thing. He's trying to talk to Pepper or Tony about having a debriefing with them about what happened in the Middle East, and they kind of just wave him off. And he constantly says what organization he's with, and he tries to say the whole thing, security, homeland, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, you got to work on the name, And then finally, at the end of the movie, he says, oh, you could just call it SHIELD, and he kind of walks away, which was a big reaction in the movie theater when we saw it. When the minute he said SHIELD, people went crazy because in these movies, you kind of really don't see things like that. A lot of superhero movies up until this movie were self-contained. There was only one superhero. There weren't any organizations from the superhero comic book, medium that were in these movies. They were just self-contained. And then seeing Tony and members of SHIELD in the movie kind of lets you know that might be something greater than just a single movie. And he was great. He was great. We didn't get much of him, but he was great. Obviously, you see more of him in the Avengers, but seeing him here and seeing how he's like this, by the book, very kind of appropriate, guy, and a very good etiquette. And, anyway, thought he was great. And the last person we're going to talk about is Paul Bettany as Jarvis. He voices Tony Stark's kind of AI, his basically not even his home security system, because he's in everything that Tony has. So just basically like his AI virtual assistant. So what are your thoughts on Paul Bettany as Jarvis?
So he is very sarcastic, and every time he delivers his sentences, it's great. You can see the relationship between them. Now, we know what Jarvis looks like. So I can definitely picture his face every time he delivers a line. I think that, again, very charismatic. I think their relationship is very organic. It works.
Yeah, I love them. Like you said, he was super sarcastic. You could tell he was that was inputted into his, I guess, programming to be sarcastic and not be like this dry, boring computer. I love them. And it's nice when you go back and hear him and know where this voice is going and this, I guess, person or this being goes in terms of the MCU. And then I often wonder, I'm like, you imagine when they call Paul Bettany and they're like, hey, we have this job for you. You're just going to sit in a booth and do some lines, and we'll do that occasionally and pay you a couple $1,000 here and there. And then a couple movies later, you're one of the central figures in the Avengers. And as of last year, you get a show, the first Disney Plus show with WandaVision, and which was won awards and everything like that. And I'm so happy for him because I love Paul Bettany and a lot of movies that he's in. But that's pretty much, that rounds up all of our actors and characters. And I mean, you have any closing statements?
No, with this, I'm gonna get better, I promise. This is fun. I am actually enjoying this. I've always been a big fan of movies, always been a big fan of Marvel. I have someone to share it with now and discuss, which I love. But yeah, thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks for watching. We're gonna obviously do this in chronological order of how they were released in theaters. So the next movie is going to be The Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton, and then we'll go from there and so on and so forth. And I hope you guys like this revisited discussion of Iron Man from 2008. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, drop any suggestions on what you would like us to revisit in the future, and we'll take that into consideration. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for watching. Peace.
Bye.